You're listening to another episode of the Just Go Bike podcast, powered by RAGBRAI. This is the award-winning podcast where we are all about the culture of cycling, just for the fun of it. Your hosts are Murph from the Murphology podcast and AP from Parrot Talk. With tales from all over the nation, come for the bikes, stay for the fun, and leave with a smile. And now here is Murph.
Hey, that's me.
And AP.
Hey, that's me.
AP.
Hi, Murph.
Hi. At the time of this recording, registration for RAGBRAI 53 is open. Oh my gosh.
That's right. RAGBRAI 53 has kicked off in a way.
Wow. And I know registration is open. And then also, if people want to get registered to attend the RAGBRAI route announcement party, which takes place January 24th, that's also open.
That is correct. And you can find information about both of those at ragbrai.com or on our Facebook page.
All right. So, okay, RAGBRAI 53, registration's open. We've been talking about it nonstop about if you already know you want to go, you should just register. So,
Yeah.
A, has anyone registered besides me so far? And B, do you have any fun stats? Like, I don't know we're only a couple days in, but like, do you know where people are from? Or do you know, like, what do you want to share?
Oh, I have all sorts of fun facts. So right now, as of right now, and it's been open for not quite a week yet, like you said, our oldest registrant that has signed up is 88 years old.
Whoa.
So kudos to that person. We usually get somebody older than that. So I'm waiting. Come on, people. Let's sign up. And our youngest registrant so far is at the age of 8.
8.
So,
oh my
yeah.
gosh. Wow.
So way to go. And it is a little girl. So good for her. I'm pretty proud of her already. So
I wonder if she's on her own bike or if she'll be on her own bike or if she'll be like on one of those tag-alongs.
Well, they don't tell us that. So
I know. We'll have to make sure they stop by our podcast booth.
Well, I'd love that. So what else I can tell from our registration, we have one person whose birthday is during RAGBRAI or from the expo day on RAGBRAI.
Oh, cool.
So good for them. Right now we have 66% male and 29% female. So the women of RAGBRAI need to step it up.
Okay.
Usually it's a lot more even. It's not quite even, but it's more even than that. So, and I think it will over time. And then to the good stuff, we have people from all 50 U.S. states.
Ooh.
And as of this time, we have people registering from the UK and from Canada. So those are our only foreign countries so far.
Ah.
Although we have had people from all over the world looking at our page, so I'm hoping that some of them will pull the trigger here.
Sure, yeah. And like you said, we both said it, we're only a few days in, so plenty more time to get registered and get those stats continuing to change. Cool.
I have one more fun fact to share.
Okay.
Our top 3, I have cities of people who registered, and the top 3 are all in Iowa, which is expected. But then the 4th most popular city of registration at this time is Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York.
That's right. So shout out to them for signing up, getting ready for RAGBRAI. Rounding out the top 10 would be other Iowa cities that you would expect, and Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Ventura, California.
Oh.
So a really cool mix of people from all over the United States, and it goes on from there. So
wow.
I'm just so excited. I just love to see where everyone's coming from, what they're doing, what they're up to. I guess I can't see what they're up to, but hopefully what they're up to is registering for RAGBRAI. So it's a good time of year for us. We're always checking obsessively.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's just super fun.
Yeah. Well, that is a great segue into today's episode. Ride director Matt Phippen and Scott Sumter, who is from Bike Iowa, they recently sat down in our very own Parrot Talk studio and did a mega deep dive into what's behind the RAGBRAI wristband.
Yeah. So they get really deep down into breaking down the costs of what it takes to make RAGBRAI happen, what it takes to get riders safely across the state each year. It's really, really cool. And I'm sure they'll mention it, but there's a companion article on bikeiowa.com that lays it all out for you in written form if you'd like to see anything written down.
they also talk in detail about the value associated with your registration. I mean, we all know the basics that registration covers, like, I don't know, state patrol, kind of manning the intersections, and medical team en route. But there is so much more, which I know you know this, AP, because you are behind the scenes. But it's an interesting interview.
Yeah, it's so true. And like you said, for me, it's something that is my day to day, but sometimes that shields what everyone else sees. Like, I don't realize how much people understand or don't understand about the ride. So This kind of lays it all out there, where stuff for me is commonplace that might be something you never heard before about RAGBRAI. So I know this is a little bit longer episode because, like you said, they really get into it. So let's roll it.
Okay. All right. Here's Matt and Scott.
This is Scott Sumter with Bike Iowa, and I'm here with Matt Phippen, Director of RAGBRAI.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hey, good, great. Thanks to Murph and AP for their Just Go Bike takeover today.
We robbed the studio, so we'll do this.
Get it. And we're in the studio, not out at Single Speed or El Bait Shop.
That's right.
So what brings us here today is a feature that Bike Iowa developed after you and I were in Tucson, Arizona a few weeks ago. The Bike Tour Network put on an event directors gathering, and they invited some of the largest events from around the country to meet for the week and talk about their events, the structure, the infrastructure, how they roll, registrations and stuff. And throughout the couple days, we noticed that RAGBRAI was one heck of a bargain. Way more complex than 9.5 events out there. Some of the huge rides like Bike New York, 30,000+ people on one day. They've got their own set of infrastructure deals to worry about. But RAGBRAI with the 7 days, the new towns every year, all that kind of infrastructure, it was real apparent that RAGBRAI is probably the most complex event in the world right now. Yeah,
it was kind of cool to, from my role, sitting there and just listening and, hearing what they deal with from a one-day perspective. I mean, you have, the Bike New York guys that deal with FBI and, their law enforcement is much bigger because it's just, New York is always under the microscope when it comes to just things that are happening around events. The gentleman from Mexico that was trying to take a ride into Mexico, dealing with what that looks like, whether it's cartels and just crazy stuff. And then you look at RAGBRAI from a scale standpoint and you go, wow, like we truly are complex. And it's really great to hear from someone else that's in the business to call that and bring it to light when they recognize how big of a deal the scale is. Because I think, we joke that, RAGBRAI is this magical event that just, happens in July. People just show up and it's all just waiting for them. And, the question is like, well, what do you do all year when it's just a 1 week event? Clearly there's a lot of things we're working on behind the scenes.
And we'll definitely get into that. But it was interesting to hear those event directors after you talked and after they talked and throughout the week, just kind of how much more respect they had for RAGBRAI and the true scale of what it brings to the table.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
It was wild. So with that, kind of came up with kind of behind the wristband, kind of trying to show what your wristband gets you for RAGBRAI, gets you way more than a campground. After going through all this, I don't see RAGBRAI as being this huge cash cow, right? I mean, it's a pretty tight budget.
Sure. Yeah. We're running a business. We have employees and we want to be profitable just like any business is every year. But at the end of the day, like I think this team is really focused on from a high level, what is possible from a give back standpoint and how do we support the towns that support us and the riders. And, I've said multiple times, without communities, we don't have a ride. So we have to do everything in our power to show support, whether it's, through funding or, the daily visits, the infrastructure that we bring in. And it's because it's just so much easier when you ask a town to say yes and they say yes right out of the gate, not, ooh, I don't know if we can pull this off. And I think right now with what we're doing from a give back standpoint and an infrastructure standpoint, more towns are saying yes because they see the value. They talk to other towns, through, different agencies that bring those towns together. And now, RAGBRAI is looked at as, we can definitely pull this off with the right help.
There's so much to it. Once you provided me some of the numbers, some of the costs, some of the expenses compared to the registration, and able to break it down, it's amazing on what RAGBRAI gives back to the community, and not only after that, and then what the community gives back to its community,
Absolutely.
Its nonprofits and its local businesses. So once you see those numbers, and that's kind of what this Bike Iowa feature lays out, and what we're going to talk about is where those numbers go and how much your registration matters. And if there was X amount of new registrations, what more we could do for the communities.
Absolutely.
And it's just, to me, it's fascinating just going down a deep dive into these numbers. And hopefully we'll educate folks on what it involves and get some new registrants out there and get folks to understand that there's no lottery anymore. There's, you're not holding a spot. Day riders, we'll talk about those. But let's dig in.
Cool.
So purely, let's talk about the scale right now. How far in advance do you plan out? I mean, it doesn't happen, in June. I mean, you're planning out way in advance.
No, I have a 3 to 5 year plan. Now, it's a plan on paper. So obviously that has to be very fluid when you're dealing with Mother Nature, you're dealing with projects, you're dealing with towns. But I know kind of the layout, whether it's north, central, or southern, for the next 3 to 5 years. But for us, the ride ends in July. We take some time to unpack and kind of unwind in August. We have a farewell tour, which is our last check-in to talk wins and losses with every town that that host riders in during July. And then September is usually the first meeting, and it's early September, where I'm in a room with DOT and State Patrol looking at a route that I've kind of put together. I always joke that, a route on paper is amazing because it's flat, it looks great, but until you start dissecting the route mile by mile, you find out about all the different projects that we need to be thinking about. Mother Nature plays a role, projects play a role. So if you have projects that are happening this year, but rain has basically stopped a lot of the forward momentum, those projects then get pushed into the next year. Or, they started up when they wanted to have them completed in 2025, they may start them in 2026. So you kind of hope that the project is done before you take a ride or riders there. Because, from my perspective, I would love to put riders on fresh new roads every year based on a project that was getting wrapped up the previous year. That's not always possible. So, that first meeting with DOT is literally looking at mile by mile. They take that file and they overlay all their projects on top of that. So we can look at, truly mile by mile and flag where they're seeing issues. And it could be issues from just, we're repainting lines. Awesome. That's easy for us to navigate. We can shift the days. It's not going to cause any problems. Now we're replacing a bridge. That's a problem. So you can't look at that road and go, there's a really, really good chance that if they start this project on this date, it's not going to be done by RAGBRAI. So you might have to rethink where that goes. Now, as you know, riding a bike in Iowa, there's only so many paved roads in these areas and a lot of gravel roads. But as you know, too, riders lose their mind if we go on gravel. We just can't go on gravel unless it's a gravel ride, So you can't just go, we'll just put them on gravel for 10 miles. That's just not a possibility. So you have to find the best option. Now, I'm also looking at the best roads. So the DOT and the county are the two agencies that we kind of play with. And if you talk to the DOT, they want us on county roads. If you talk to the county, they want us on state roads. And my pitch to them is I want to be on the safest roads. So whether it's a state road or it is a county road, if it's safe, then we need to be on that road. And it may play a role in, in some cases, the state road may be the safest option because of where it's at. We look at traffic counts. We look at, how many people is this going to affect based on this. And the big picture is during this week, Iowa does not stop. Transportation still happens. So there has to be an A and a B and a C plan. If there's an accident on a major artery that we're close to, where is the DOT going to detour traffic? They can't detour traffic on a road that we're using for RAGBRAI that causes problems. So there has to be other options. So it's not just the RAGBRAI route and the world that happens around us. It's the RAGBRAI route. It's the support route. It's their detour routes. It's their projects. So it's truly the the biggest puzzle you'll ever put together, and one piece could change the entire day, or in some cases multiple days, depending on where you go. So, once we overlaid their projects, we look at every project they're dealing with. We look at the times they're thinking about starting, when they're going to finish. And if everything looks good on our end, we keep moving forward. There has been times, especially this year, that, since the start, we've already changed the route five or six times already since September. And that's just due to things that we see on the radar. But the cool thing is, with our partnership with the DOT, they're willing to help us be flexible and flexible from a standpoint of changing their plans to help us be successful. So they understand how big of a deal this ride is for the state of Iowa. They don't want to be the one that causes the hiccup or the stop. So if they can make a change, they're willing to support us and help make that change. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we've been in rooms for the last, 4 or 5, rides now, talking through issues and concerns. And, one thing I'll tell the DOT and the State Patrol is, I'll never die on any hill. If you tell me this makes more sense and it's better for the entire state of Iowa and this ride, we'll make the change. I don't need to be on that road if there's a better option or a different option. I just want to be on the most efficient option and the safest option. I don't want to add miles just to add miles. I want to be, as easy as it can be. So if we tell a rider it's 59.3 miles and it's 1,500 feet to climb, from start to finish, it is that mileage and they're good to go. I don't want to have long days that don't need to be long if there's different options. But as you know, there's only so many roads you can do and so many options to get across, but they have to be the safest.
And I remember at some points you talked about one project could change, one pass-through town or an overnight town. But that doesn't just affect one town. It could be 2 overnights and 8 pass-throughs just by one project. I mean, you got to, morph into another route, and that relationship you got with the Iowa DOT and the counties is key. I don't think that level of that relationship where they would change a state project in order to accommodate RAGBRAI for 1 year. I don't think that's ever happened.
I'm very proud of that. I mean, I believe we have probably the best partnership with the State Patrol. I talk to Alex Dinkla, who is our sergeant, on a regular basis. With DOT, same thing, being able to just look through all the projects and knowing that, we're in this together. Yes, this is our ride. This is RAGBRAI, but we're on their roads. And we want to be good guests in their communities, in their counties, and on their roads. So whatever that looks like from a standpoint of, if this road makes more sense, let's put them on that road. If this road is safer, we're definitely putting them on that road. And at the end of the day, I want to showcase the best parts of Iowa. And sometimes, these different roads bring out a new attraction or something for the riders to look at. So it's been wins across the state for the last 4 years.
And what we saw in most of the event directors conference was most rides do the same route every year.
It's one day. How easy would that be?
But this changes every time. I mean, how many total communities and counties are usually on average are involved?
I think, it's over 30 is the number for towns affected. Over 15 is usually the number for counties, depending on where you go. Obviously you want to give towns and communities breaks. I think Orange City was the first town in my role as the director that said, hey, we want you back next year. So they want to take it on again because they saw the, what the impact could be when it's done correctly. But you want to give riders something different. We joke, how easy would it be to have the same route year after year where it's a set it and forget it, but it hurts registration. We're talking to the Bike New York guys. They want to try to find 2 to 3 different routes that would get that rider that's done it years ago to come back because it's a different route. Where we have a new route every year and new communities we pass through, new roads. But I'll tell you right now, in my role, we've been on these roads before. So there's nothing new that I'm pulling out of my hat that somebody looks at and goes, oh my gosh, this is a completely new route, where over the last 53 years of riding from the one side of the state to the other, you're going to be on these same roads. So, the guy that chirps in my ear that the ride's getting too hard and too tough, 30 years ago, we were on these same roads where you didn't think it was that tough 30 years ago, but your body's different right now. The elevation is the same. Iowa is hilly. We joke about that all the time where people don't think it's hilly, but, depending on where you go, north, central, or southern, definitely adds, a different flavor of intensity when it comes to elevation. I think you talk to some riders that want a flat route, they want a short route. You talk to riders that want hills and they want scenery. I mean, we try to build a route that is awesome for everybody, and people can find pockets where they can settle in and truly enjoy that ride for themselves. But at the end of the day, we're riding bikes in Iowa.
And even last year, a nice flat day turned into a
One of the
problem with
hardest,
a lot of people.
it was
With
hard.
a little headwind and heat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mother Nature will get you one way or the other.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like you said, one town can change, and that can increase mileage 20 to 30 miles, and all of a sudden you got the hilliest day on the route just because of one little change. And so people sometimes think you're trying to make it hard, make it the hilliest.
Yeah, I don't want to take souls. I'm not trying to figure out how I'm going to make it as painful as possible. The way I look at things, if I can average 10 miles between towns, that is a major win. There are days where you have shorter distances. I mean, there was one town last year was like 1.9 miles to the next town. I mean, hopefully you can make it there. It's only 2 miles, but there's also times where it's over 20. And that's, from our perspective, if it is that longer distance, there needs to be support in between that. We can't have these food deserts where there's just nothing for 20 some miles. So there needs to be a vendor out there. So if Mr. Pork Chop's set up, or craft beer or beer bus, or whoever that is, to give riders support, because I can't just pop a town up on the side of the road. They need to have some support somewhere.
So keep going with that scale standpoint. I mean, how many trips do you make across the state?
Well,
in planning
right now, I've already made 3. But during the season, it'll be 2025 when it's all said and done. And that's full trip. So, I've shared on social my odometer, and it was 530 miles one day from my house to the start town and then back. So that's just one day of me out scouting roads, checking, towns out, trying to fly under the radar so a town doesn't see the RAGBRAI truck pull through and hang out on the side of the road. But yeah, I mean, I've learned that if we show up for the towns will show up for the riders in July. I want towns to know that if you have questions, you call, we get you the answers, because, in a lot of these cases, they're planning after 5 o'clock, after they get off work, 7 o'clock at night, they have a meeting and they have a question. If I can get them an answer right then and there, they can move forward. I don't want them waiting another day before us to get back to them. So we have, scheduled meetings that usually will start in February after we announce that we have a plan in place that, per the calendar, helps the towns be successful. So that first trip out of the gate is usually our scouting trip. Camping is obviously a big deal on RAGBRAI. We want to lock in all the green spaces. We want to know where all the parking lots are at and be able to see kind of high level where everything could go. And, strategically, we make sure that these meetings make the most sense. So as a town planning, they can check boxes and move forward. So yeah, it's 20 to 25 times, 500 plus miles each trip is kind of a minimum for us. But there's times where, like last year, I would drive from my house on Monday morning to Des Moines, pick someone up, drive to the start town, and then over the course of the week, make our trip across the state to drive basically past my hometown of Vinton to go back to Des Moines to drop someone off, and then drive back to my hometown. So a lot of windshield time. My office is basically my truck, so I'm in there a lot, but, definitely a lot of scouting the roads. It's really cool in my role to see Iowa change, and go full circle from, being snowy and gross and brown to being vibrant with all the colors over the course of travel. So it's pretty cool.
You can definitely see an increase in the engagement on the town committees and all that, because I don't think in previous times the director and his staff went back and forth that many times. I mean, you can tell that face to face. You can tell that it's a higher caliber of committees and what they're doing and what they're providing. I mean, I can see it, and hopefully other people can too.
Well, I hope so. I mean, this is a big lift for the towns if they do it right. It's also a big commitment, right? So you want the committees to feel that they're not alone, and that's that's what we tell them is, this is a RAGBRAI event, but we are showcasing your community. So we want you guys to own this festival in your downtown. If they feel that we're in it together, we work harder together. If they feel there's a disconnect, they're not willing to show up as much. But if we can tell them, hey, we're going to be in your community every other week for the first 2 months and then, here's the schedule going forward, they have the ability to, one, get in a groove and know that, we have to start checking these boxes, and it just helps us be successful. Plus, we know what's going on too. So if there is an issue or concern, we can work through that together as a team, not RAGBRAI versus everybody else.
High fives for that. I mean, from my standpoint, I can definitely tell a difference, and I appreciate all that windshield time for sure. So the scale, huge. Let's talk about the costs that take it, that make all this happen.
Yeah. So we open registration on the 15th of November. Basically, the money that comes in from registration will go back out in checks. So we've committed with all our overnight towns $50,000 up front so they can start planning and, securing assets that they need. One of their biggest assets is porta potties. You can't wait till the end. Porta potty goes from $70 to $120. Supply and demand is a big deal. We need porta potties. So up front, we will hand them a check for $50,000, and that's come a long way from the start. Years and years and years ago, I think an overnight town got $8,500, and that was basically all the give back. Now you fast forward to 2026, to be able to hand a check of $50,000 to a town and say, this is going to cover your expenses, not all of them, but a lot of the major ones. You still need to go out and find sponsorships and be smart with your money. And at the end of the day too, be smart with the money. Invest it in the community. Don't invest it in stupid stuff that the riders don't care about. I always tell the towns, you don't need to spend $50,000 to have an epic band when a $7,500 band will kill it just like the bigger bands do. So just be smart with it. And we have meetings that we schedule with one of our guys out of Coralville. His name's Josh Schomburger, who talks about budget and preparing a smart budget. And he's done very well with RAGBRAI for his community, and just talks through the towns of what to think about, what to throw out. And that's really kind of helped towns be successful. But at the end of the day, you want the town to feel like they have the support. Meeting towns, which is the halfway point, receive $10,000 from us. And then every pass-through town is $5,000. So you don't have to pass the hat at church because RAGBRAI is coming through. You have funds that are there to go. And the cool thing right now is, during our recaps, our towns are putting money aside for future years. So they're not only giving back to the community and helping with, building new infrastructure, they're putting funds aside in a RAGBRAI jar, basically. So if and when we come back in 3 to 5 years, they have a little bit extra there waiting for them too. Counties is one of the biggest things that we're focusing on. Obviously, we want to make sure that the counties feel good about us being there too, because they play a big role. And there's 3 big partner agencies that we deal with. Obviously, the sheriff, county engineer, and the emergency management guys and gals that help us be safe. So this year we decided that we're going to change it up a little bit. Last year was $5,000. We're going to move it to $6,000. So each one of those organizations will receive $2,000 from RAGBRAI after the event. And it's just our way of saying thank you. There's times with the route that we may be in a county for one turn and we don't need a whole lot of support. They're still going to get the money. It's just our way of saying thank you. So if those 3 agencies can, use that to buy something that their program or their department needs, by all means, please use it for that. But like I said, it doesn't cover the overtime. It doesn't cover, some of the bigger expenses that they have. It's just our way of saying thank you, because we do offset that with our State Patrol. So we have 2 teams of State Patrol that we pay for to be on route with us. One team does the turn by turn that works the intersections. That does take some of that lift off the county guys and gals. And then the other team kind of helps move the ride along. So if we can put a trooper at a corner instead of a county guy or gal, they can focus on, their county and what their daily job is. So we try to offset that a little bit. But yeah, it'll be a new change for the adding emergency management. Last year we had every emergency management director kind of build their own plans for the county. The previous year, every town did it, and it came in different files, different color paper, different font. It was just kind of hard to put it all together. So now if we're going through your county, we're going to ask the county emergency management people to build their own programs and their own plans for every town that's in their county.
And I think it's cool. It's all up front. It's not like after RAGBRAI happens, hey, we're going to give you back a portion of the proceeds. This is up front so they can plan for it well.
They need the money right now. Absolutely. Yep.
And then you mentioned some other costs we lay out in the feature, but like traveling video board, it's just something you don't think about. Over $13,000 for that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, we brand the stage, so all our big sponsors are on the stage, but we wanted to find a way that all the town sponsors could get some love too. So I don't know how big it is. It's a massive video screen. It basically, gets loaded up and, set up every overnight town. And then they just put a jump file or a flash file into it, and it shows all the different logos. It shows the maps. It's just a way of, talking to a sponsor and saying, hey, your logo could be stage right every, at the concert. And it's just a way to say thank you to those sponsors.
And another cost that RAGBRAI is providing, I mean, almost $10,000 in volunteer shirts.
Yeah.
And $7,500 in maps.
We load those shirts up in the back of the truck and we drive them across and drop them off. And, they're able to take the back to a printer and, put a sponsor on the back of the shirt. And, one thing that we're changing this year is the maps. I've learned that we have riders that they can do RAGBRAI as long as they have a paper map in their hand. So to be able to give them the tear-offs, something that they look forward to. Our graphic designer will create all the images, work with the towns to have all the points of interest on the maps, take them to one of our printers, get them printed, and then be able to drop them off. So last year we basically just created the file, and then they were in charge of printing them and getting them, sent out. We're taking care of it, the printing now, and then we're going to distribute them to the towns because, towns had to connect with each other. You had to drive, 60 miles forward, 60 miles backwards to drop maps off. We're just going to do that as part of our travel. But yeah, to take that expense off them, and then just they help us with all the dots on the map. We produce it, and then they have it.
I mean, well over $1 million up front, right? And that's not even including your staff, insurance, permits, vehicles, rentals. You
don't want to talk insurance
fuel.
when it comes to RAGBRAI.
And that's just nuts to go on top of everything that you're seed funding all these towns to minimize their risk.
It's something, that number is something we're proud of, $1 million of give back. And, what we always talk about as a team is how much could we actually give back if things did change and some parts of this conversation go in a different direction. Because like I said, we want to showcase Iowa. We want to support Iowa. And I want to get to a point where these towns are fighting over us because they want RAGBRAI to come back through. It just makes our jobs easier when you have someone that says, we want this every year if we could have it. And I think finding extra support, finding ways to give back more. I mean, we just joke, if you were able to give back, $100,000 to these towns instead of $50,000, that changes the game for them. There's very limited risk. But we still have to be profitable. We still have to run a business. We still have to pay salaries, and, you have to have insurance and all these things. But yeah, there's definitely a give back right at the top where your registration comes in and basically goes right back out into a check to a town.
That is, it just still blows me away just looking at all the numbers that you lay that out. $230 is what registration costs early bird, right?
Yeah.
$230. I mean, and I try to think of other vacations we take anywhere else and looking at all those other rides. Most of those other rides, $500, nobody blinks an eye. $1,000
for one
blinks
day.
An eye. Yeah.
For one day in some cases.
Yeah. Some of the, a one-day gravel race, like Unbound per se, is $200+. I mean, it's almost the cost of the whole week on RAGBRAI. And I think we'll get into some of the misconceptions on what the registration means, but we can see right now with the costs and the scale, $230 is one heck of a bargain. So inexpensive compared to all the other events going around.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also, the tough part is it's me saying it's inexpensive, but I don't know what your funds are. But if you look at the scale wise and truly what the rider has every day, if they need services, they're there for them, right? And I run into this all the time where I'll be standing in line talking to someone, having to go to the bathroom, and there's 3 guys ahead of me that have no bands on them. I would love to have this fast pass on my wrist that goes, I as a rider, I paid, I get to blow by you 4 guys, but I hear, I don't use your services, so I don't pay. But yet you're standing in a line of porta potties that are part of the services that RAGBRAI helps towns provide. So there's just a lot of misconceptions.
The planning, like the roads on the pre-ride, we identify like big potholes, big cracks that the counties fix. And when you go by it on RAGBRAI, you're like, boy, that was smooth. It wouldn't have happened without.
I always, when you talk about counties and roads, we have a county that is Kossuth County. And, there is a gentleman there that, wants to have great roads for these riders. And there was a stretch of roads, if you remember on pre-ride, that was like a minefield for like 4 miles. I mean, anywhere you tried to navigate, you were hitting something. And he figured it out and basically blacktopped the road for riders. It didn't have markings on it, but it was just, this brand new road that he just understands the importance of providing a great experience for the riders. And if you do a good job, you're probably going to come back. You're going to come back and visit some of these towns and some of these counties. So, he took it upon himself and his team to figure it out. And, when we got to ride on that road and it was basically brand new, it was pretty cool for the day.
So it explains to me like the scale and the costs, but let's maybe switch over to the value.
Okay.
Value of this ride. So we talked about $230 early bird, one heck of a bargain. We figure about 20,000 registered riders a year. I mean, we'll get into unregistered in a bit, but what do you think riders get for that $230 that other rides 3 or 4 times the cost of RAGBRAI? I mean, what do they get?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think safety is one of the biggest ones. I mean, you and I were on a road or roads in Florida on a ride that cost double or in some cases triple the what RAGBRAI paid. And it was a 4-lane highway where you're getting buzzed by major vehicles and you're on the shoulder of the road with, road debris. So everything that's kind of getting knocked off or pushed off, you're navigating those. So the broken bottles, the miscellaneous car parts that were there. I mean, all these things where when you punch your ticket for RAGBRAI, part of the experience is I want you to get lost in Iowa and enjoy your surroundings, not be constantly having to call out pothole or, crack or, these things that are happening. From a safety issue, you're on, for the most part, secured, safe roads. Now, there are times where the daily Iowan turns down the wrong road and is en route with you and trying to get from point A to point B. Well, we navigate it together. But for the most part, the riders close the roads, right? I mean, that's kind of the cool thing when people ask about how do you do this. We do have active roadways. I mean, you can still get your vehicle down the road. It's probably not going to be the most fun experience you're ever going to have if you're in that vehicle. And it's probably not going to be a good experience for the riders that are around you. But you do have drivers that are on these roads. But for the most part, you're on a road that is surrounded by bicycles and not vehicles. So you have, from a safety issue, you have troopers working turn by turn, stopping traffic, moving traffic, so you can truly not have to worry about vehicles and having to navigate that. We do transport your bags. And, I've heard that, well, I don't use that service, so I don't need to register for the ride. That's just a service we provide to get riders across the state. So if you're looking at doing RAGBRAI and you want the camping experience and you can't, run fully self-supported, you can drop your bag off with us. We load it on our trailers. We get you through the line as quickly as possible so you can get on the road and get moving down the road. And then when you arrive in the overnight town, your bag is waiting in a pile of other bags to then go to your campsite. So there's that. Food is obviously a big deal. Working with these towns, and it's not just the big towns, it's all the pass-through towns too, helping them secure vendors so there is enough food for everybody. And I think that's kind of changed over the last 4 years. We've gotten more food, and you want to find the sweet spot so you don't have too many vendors, you don't have too less of vendors, so everybody feels like they had a good day. And I think we've kind of found out what that number is when it comes to these pass-through towns to give riders the support. Now, I can't have every possible option to make everybody happy, when it comes to food, but I'll give you as many different options as possible. The big thing is, and we're looking at changing it this year, is just the nutrition side of things and the hydration side of things. So, if you're drinking a beer, yes, the beer has water in it, but that water is not helping you be successful for the day. So having other aid stations that can help put nutrients back into your body and electrolytes back into your body, you can't survive on a pork chop every day. You need more than just a pork chop. So it's giving you other options, and, food and, fruit standpoint from energy is a big deal. So having, the fruit on the side of the road and having things that are better than just the greasy burger and the things that, your body is telling you that it doesn't need, it needs other nutrients, finding that doesn't happen by accident, so it's working with these towns to find the vendors, to bring the vendors in, the town then creates a vending fee. That money stays in the community. RAGBRAI does not take any of that money. So if your vending fee is $400 and you're a vendor, that money goes back into the community that you're vending in. So that's something that just, it's not magic. It's a lot of planning. We help them lay out their downtown so their downtown makes sense. So when you roll in, you have water stations as you come into town, you have a water station when you leave town. One of the big things is signage that we're working on getting better with, especially after the last couple of years. They had the water stations, but when you have, bicyclists at ground level, the hydrants are covered up because you can't see them. So putting signs well up high, so it says water, that's you can see 10 feet in the air, then you don't miss the water stations. So it's just kind of helping lay out where everything should go. And then, being able to provide things to them that can help provide that experience.
And new last year was the app too, right?
Yes, the app is a big one. And that was a huge game changer for us. Obviously rural Iowa, internet goes away really quick when you have 20,000 people on their phones. So, being able to design an app that everything was offline. So all the maps, all the ways of, the towns having stuff laid out could all be, in your hand. And you could access it at any time during the day, depending on traffic. It was also our way of being able to communicate and send messages out. So, last year there was times where we had storms, being able to send messages out through the app and doing that was a huge game changer for us. Obviously that costs money to have a developer come in, and it's a developer that works closely with RAGBRAI to be able to take our vision and his vision and kind of put it together to create an app that actually works and worked well. We have a meeting with him here in a couple of weeks where we're going to take it to another level again, because we've learned that people want it. We joke, if you're an iPhone user, you're good to go, but if you're an Android, I'd buy an iPhone.
I was the Android tester last year.
Yeah. But it just shows that if we have something that actually does work and gives the riders everything they need in their hand, let's find ways to add more to it. You have riders that want the paper in their hand to look at things, but then the majority of the newer riders they live on their phone. So if you can give it to them on the phone via the app, it seems to change the game.
It's such a game changer. You can look at the daily map. You can look at the entertainment that night. You can look at this mileage between towns, and just that in itself, just that looking at it, be able to look at it multiple times a day, total game changer. And we use it prototype on the pre-ride.
Yeah,
and just being able to look at that. Oh, when's our meeting tonight? Where are we going to eat? What options are there for food in town? And I kind of wanted to go back to the vendors in town.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of the, I'm not going to call it a complaint, but some of the comments I hear are RAGBRAI is becoming so corporate. They bring in all these outside vendors and they don't let the towns have the money from that.
Oh, sure.
But most of the towns can't handle that amount of people. How do you come back to that?
Local vendors are top of the mind for us. We want the towns to be able to showcase their local vendors. So if it's a local bar or it's a local restaurant, we want them to have a good day, right? And that's the big thing. But some of these small towns, these rural Iowa towns, they may have one bar and maybe one restaurant in town. They can't support 20,000 people with one bar and one restaurant. So there has to be more vending brought in the communities. So, we talk to the towns from the standpoint of when you're helping or building up their downtown, let's put some bigger vendors close in proximity to your local vendors, because it helps hold people. Plus it draws attention to that local business that you want to showcase. And part of it too is, via the app or via, just marketing, putting out there what you're going to be doing. You have to spend money to make money, and you have to be able to market your business and not let it get lost and just assume riders are going to find you. What are you doing so riders do find you? And I think pre-ride is a big thing for us, where we want to showcase the small town Iowa and the small town businesses. So if we're in a bar or a restaurant that took good care of us, we're going to promote them. If they're doing something special that day that's unique to their community, we want to promote that. So, when we look at vendors, it's one, how many vendors should you have in whatever size town you are, whether you're a breakfast town, whether you're, the brunch town, the lunch town, the after lunch town. There's so many different things, because you don't want to serve breakfast at 4:00 in the afternoon. So that breakfast vendor is not going to do well selling bacon and eggs at 4:00, where I want, energy or maybe something a little bit bigger, but they're going to kill it, that first 20 miles. So making sure those breakfast vendors are in the right spots, making sure there's always, fruit in key spots, finding the fun things that we like on pre-ride, which is like the grapes on a stick and just things that, riders look for that's easy to handle, quick energy, and towns can make money. Pie is one of the biggest things. If you have a community that has the pie ladies, and I say pie men too, because I don't want to throw anybody out, but, our riders know the difference between a store-bought pie or a handmade crust from scratch, truly love put into it pie, and they seek those out. And every town that had homemade pies sold out. this last year on RAGBRAI, because it's something that riders look for. And I think that's one of those anomalies that you can sell in the morning and you can sell it in the evening, because people want pie all times of the day. But, it's just making sure that when we're finalizing plans with towns, we feel that they have enough vendors. We feel that they have enough support to be able to do that, because at the end of the day, I want riders to be able to spend as much time as possible based on how their body's going to perform to showcase these communities. There's a reason why we have shutdown times, so the ride does move. But if a town doesn't do right by the riders, you will roll through, fill up your bottle with free water, and move on, and not take advantage of what the town prepared for you because they didn't put forth the effort. And years ago, we saw that. We're not seeing it too much anymore, where towns are laid out in a way from a vendor standpoint, an entertainment standpoint, that holds riders as long as possible. And then you have the ability to, as the state patrol is coming through at that, that final hour, you're truly pushing out riders that have been kind of hanging out for too long.
And I think you're able to, over your time and actually looking at previous statistics and history on towns, you're able to enhance your playbook to go to a new town. Hey, this town has 10,000 people. It's similar road structure coming in. We can look back at the last few routes and it's like, oh, X town was similar. Here's what worked for them. Here's the numbers. Don't go overboard, don't go underboard. But you're able to use that past data.
Yeah, we've, the same guy that developed our app created our portal for us. So being able to upload facts, so we can, to your point, take a town that has 5,000 people, has one way in and one way out. We can pull that data and go, here's how you're laid out. You're very similar to this town A in 2025. Here's their plan. Here's what they had for vendors. Here's what they had for porta potties. Here's their notes. They wish they would have had 10 more porta potties. Like, we can now use facts, where in previous years everything was in the binder, the book. You hope that towns saved the book. You'd come back in 3 to 5 to 20 years later and no one knows where anything's at, and they don't know how they did. They don't know how many things, porta potties they had. Now we can give them facts, and you have the ability to communicate with towns ahead and behind when you're asking questions about, okay, how many porta potties are you doing? What are you seeing for pricing right now for porta potties? Beverage garden, how many different beverages are you planning on bringing in? So it really takes away a lot of the questions that we get hit hard with in those meetings, because they're getting answers prior to us showing up.
So you mentioned the portal. That's one thing that probably none of the riders are aware of, right? So, but it's something new. It's something RAGBRAI provides. It's something that helps streamline the event. Can you talk about that portal a little bit?
So it connects all our communities together. So it is an intranet that has, a storage facility that keeps track of all our facts. So we can upload files, we can upload budgets, we can upload plans, documentation, anything that we need that needs to live somewhere. So as we're traveling across, we have someone that's taking notes, so we can upload the meeting notes to the file. So if and when they get home, they can go, oh, what did Matt say about this? They can go to the file, they can pull it up and read exactly what we said. We're never going to tell a town how to physically do something. We're going to give them both sides of the coin and say, here's what's worked, here's what hasn't worked. We're in your community. We want to be good guests. You decide how you want to make this happen. And over the course of, all the planning, everything gets uploaded. At the end, we ask the towns to upload everything. Budgets are probably the biggest thing we ask them to upload, because then you have solid facts of what they spent. So then you can, take that to new overnight towns and say, okay, a town of 25,000 people, here's the budget that they have. This matches with the size of your community. Stay in line with this. This is how they were successful. So then they kind of have a baseline to hit. Yeah. Like I said, you can take the $50,000 and invest it and do okay, but you still need to go out and get sponsorships. Be smart with what you're buying. Work on discounts. Work on in-kind stuff, and then you're able to be successful and then give back at the end.
No, I think that's a wonderful resource, and I would love to, dig in more of that. I'm interested to see where the new app goes, because It was so useful last year. So the quote you made in Tucson, the one that kind of launched my thought process to kind of lay this out, right? You said, RAGBRAI's biggest challenge isn't getting more riders to show up, it's getting the riders who show up to register. And you could hear a pin drop in that room of event directors. And they're like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, if you look at just events in general, there are events out there that are awesome events, but they're seeing fewer and fewer people register. Obviously, you live in the cross race world. seeing that where the numbers just get smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where you have 3 guys racing each other because that's all that you could fill in that category. Yes. We have the ability, and it's something that I'm proud of, that people want to do RAGBRAI. RAGBRAI is this bucket list item. It's, I need to do it. I've heard about this. Anytime we're traveling somewhere, we have an Iowa t-shirt on, you hear the Go Hawks, and then you're like, oh, RAGBRAI, you hear that that follow-up. So we do have the ability to pull riders. We are seeing new riders show up, which is fantastic. I want to see younger riders. I want to see more females. I want to see whatever color, shape, size you are. Like I want you on RAGBRAI. But where the other part is, but we need the ones that just show up to register. And that is the dreaded word called the bandit, which is, someone that just says, I'm riding today, I'm going to ride this week. I don't use your services. I'll never use your services. I'm going to be on the roads. The roads are open, but I'm not going to register. And then we start just, in our brains, like what is truly possible if we got everyone to register? You talk to the Bike New York guys, which is a closed course. It's policed by law enforcement, FBI. I mean, all of these things. Like, they don't have bandits, right? I mean, they can't have someone that just poaches it. Yeah. Where I could tell you, if I see you with no band, hey, you can't ride because you don't have a band on. You could ride a block down the road, hop back on the route, and I have no idea that you're back on the route. So it's just one of those things where the majority of it is Iowans that have been here and have been doing it for years. This is always how I've done it. It is it's the guy or gal sitting in the office, and man, tomorrow's going to be 70 degrees and they're going to have tailwinds, and it's literally 10 miles away. I got a tickle in my throat. I'm calling my boss. I'm calling in sick, and then I'm on RAGBRAI, but I'm not registering because I'm not really doing the event. I'm just showing up. So it's something we're always going to fight, but I think, part of what you did with this article is to get people to think about truly everything that goes into it. So if you are a bandit, or if you are someone that just doesn't know the full facts, and you want to help support the ride that supports the towns, then you need to pay.
And going through that, one of the purposes of this feature was to educate folks on what goes into planning and what those costs are. And the other one was, how can we get those bandit riders to register, kind of explaining what goes into it, kind of a more or less turn it into a shared investment for folks. It's like, sure. God, I love this ride. I do it every year. I bring my friends. I do this. Hey, $230 for the week. Not bad, but you get an extra 5,000 people to register. That's $250,000 back into the Iowa towns. Extra 10,000 brings in like 1.5 million. Doubling it kind of brings in enough money where you can pretty much eliminate all the financial risks of the host towns. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you talk to the State Patrol, and their math is whatever you register, just double that number every day. So if you register 20,000 people, which is typically what we do anymore, you're going to have another 20,000 that just show up. And, that number is skewed depending on where you're at. I mean, as we get close to the central part of the state, bigger communities, more bandits show up. That's the thing. Yep. When you add a day with shorter mileages and it's flatter, more people like that show up. You don't have to buy a week-long pass. We sell day passes, and I also heard, well, I don't want to take somebody else's pass away, so that's why I don't register. There's no cap. There's no lottery anymore. It's you register, you have a ticket for RAGBRAI because you're already coming. We just want to be able to plan for you, and that's one of the biggest things that from a planning standpoint. We're very transparent with the towns. We tell them up front, every time we see them, which is 20 plus times, here's where we're at for total register riders. Here's where we're at for support drivers. Here's where we're at for support vehicles. But what we don't know, we don't know. So when you just show up the day of, we're not counting for you. So if I could tell a town 25,000, no more, no less, now how many porta potties we need, how many different vendors we need, from a lot standpoint, how many spots we need for buses and all these other things. It just makes the planning process so much easier. But what happens now is you show up and now you're standing in line of porta potties. And, the other thing too is your support driver's coming in who doesn't register, trying to get into a spot where a registered team or a rider has already punched their ticket from a support vehicle standpoint, but you still want to be close. And it's not fair to that person that paid the money to have a support vehicle pass. So it just helps with logistics. It helps with the planning process. It helps with just the understanding of where stuff's going to go, because in a lot of these cases, we're taking a town of 15 to, 20 some thousand and then now adding another 20,000 plus on top of that. We need to utilize every possible green space, every possible parking lot. And if we truly know up front what's coming, we can help them be successful.
And you could just explain all the unintentional problems that come through with almost double the registered riders. And I know you kind of plan for it, but yeah, it's cheapest vacation you can take.
Sure.
$230. I just don't get it. So throughout the numbers, kind of like where does the wristband fee goes, I calculate at least 150 of that $230 goes into that infrastructure costs. Sure. That's before RAGBRAI gives. That's before the long-term community investments. That's before your staff costs, insurance, permits, all that. That's before that. So a huge portion of that goes right through there. So if you have that many bandits, that means kind of your registered riders are somewhat subsidizing the, if you think about it that way, that's a kind of a different way to look at it. So if you're wearing a wristband and a whole long line of you got to wait an extra 10 minutes at the porta potty or in vendor lines, and kind of something that kind of gets irritating after a while.
Well, and it was definitely more vocal last year on social, asking RAGBRAI, what are we going to do to fix the bandit problem? And, this bandit problem didn't just happen over the last 5 years. This bandit problem has been happening for over 50 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's from our perspective, it's stuff like this where we just show the value and what goes into this event, and you're showing up every year. Invest in the ride that is investing in the state of Iowa and these towns, and then the problem goes away.
Well, and we kind of joke about it now, but for years I was one of those bandit riders.
You're a bandit.
Just didn't know $200 back in the day was food and beer money to get across, and then it kind of turned into team fees, and you're like, well, I'm giving back. I'm spending money at the bars and restaurants, but you really don't think about the infrastructure at that point in time. Older, wiser, well, somewhat wiser now, but these numbers don't lie. I mean, it's like, wow, I cannot believe this happens in our backyard, and it takes all year long, and a team of 6 to 7 and plus all the contractors. It just amazes me, and I feel a little bit more behind the scenes now, but now I'm putting both my feet over those tracks to kind of explain, and hopefully we can get more people that haven't registered to register and just educate those who do on what it goes for.
Absolutely.
You just mentioned the day riders. So yep. I think there's a lot that show up for the week that don't register: vehicles, team buses, that kind of stuff. Some on route, some off route. But the day rider is $45 a day. Mm-hmm. Is that what it is?
Yep.
So, and I think a lot of that is education. Some of the people in the towns don't even really think about it. They're like, I live in town. I'm going to ride to the next town, then get my husband to pick me up and bring me back home. They don't really think about that. But that's kind of like going to a multi-day music festival and getting the, I only want to go one day or only want to listen to this one song. It's like you really can't do that.
Yeah. No, it gives you the option of, if you are just, spontaneous, spur of the moment, I'm going to go ride, we have the ability to punch your ticket for you and, help you give back to the towns that are now supporting you, because that, that day rider that shows up the day of, for the last 6 months, we haven't planned for you. So we if we knew you're coming right out of the gate, then by all means, like, we can start planning for you. And that's something we've changed, this year. And, we've added it previous years is, the registration process opens, like I said, on November 15th, and you have no idea where the route's going. So you punch your ticket and you hope it's going in a northern route or a central route or a southern route, depending on what your likes are. And then you find out in January that it's south, and you go, oh man, all those hills. Now, you already punched your ticket. So you have the ability to, transfer that. So that's something we kind of took away last year, because we had so many people getting scammed with transfers, because you would punch your ticket for RAGBRAI. I love RAGBRAI. I can't wait to go every year. And then something happens and you need to sell your band. Well, you find some scammer that is trying to buy your band from you, and you transfer the band, but you never get the money. So now we kind of change with our platform that we use for registration, having a process where those two people can connect each other. It's all digital. So the money gets transferred, and then the bands get transferred. Because the bigger thing is, if it is me and you, and I transfer and I sell you a band, but we don't go through all the proper channels, and you crash on your bicycle and we take care of you, you're calling my wife because I'm your number tied to it and telling Danielle that, hey, Matt's down on a bicycle, we're taking him to the hospital, and it's not you, you're Scott. So, making sure that everything lines up from a high level standpoint, from a safety standpoint. So there's that. And then, through the platform too, you can buy insurance. So if something does happen, July, you trip on a crack and break your wrist, you can't come. Well, you can't refund your ticket anymore because it's too far past the deadline. The insurance that you bought helps you get your money back. So there's ways of doing it. There's people that hold out to the end because they want to know exactly where we're going, what we're doing. But we've kind of helped put systems in place to get money back if you decide something, you don't like the route, or you can't do the route, or you have the ability to transfer it off later down the road.
So I think it makes it well worth registering early. I mean,
sure.
Otherwise, it's $400
at the end.
If you want to register day of, it's like
Yep,
$400. Yeah. So it definitely goes up. But still, looking at other rides, even that $400 is still cheaper than what the early bird pricing on other events are.
Yep, for sure.
It's nuts. And it's just the more I read through these numbers and get familiar with them, it's such a good deal. We explained the day riders. Is it easy, like a day rider, if a friend says, "Hell, go register tomorrow"? It's like you can still do that all online.
Yep.
You
can do it through the registration process. Day of, you can go to the merchandise booths and sign up there and get your ticket punched that way. We have specific bands. So we have a band for the week long. It's a certain color, and then every day is a different color. So if Monday's pink, Tuesday is green, you can buy those passes for that. If you're going to ride multiple days, buying the 3 days. But yeah, we make sure that we can make that happen for you.
So I just want to pump it in one more time. Like every wristband matters, right? I mean, more registrations, you can give more give back, you can plan better, and I think RAGBRAI just becomes better. So going into that, some of the older teams, some of the veterans, they're kind of aging out, right?
Sure.
I mean, I think that whole bandit mindset in 10 years will probably most generally be gone.
Yeah, I would say so.
Right now, how would you tell the veterans or like a team, hey, you got a team of 60, nobody registers. What's your advice to kind of selling the registration process?
Yeah, no, I think if you truly care about the ride and you're passionate about cycling and, having this ride exist for future years and future riders that are just now finding it for the first time, do your part and help us be successful. And then know that the team that is on RAGBRAI is working with the towns to make sure the towns are successful. If we have the ability to, find ways to give back in different categories, my brain, like I think I want to do scholarships. I mean, there's a lot of things that this team wants to do for future years that truly, puts RAGBRAI in this event, miles out front of other events. I'm definitely passionate about it. I think that, I shouldn't say I think, I know that this ride does not exist anywhere else in the world. The amount of connection and the friendships that are forged, the marriages, all the above that come out of this event, you don't get this in a lot of these other events that we're a part of. Yeah, they're fun. We have a good time, but there's a lot of times you don't stay connected. Where RAGBRAI, there's those constant connections going forward. So, if you are a bandit or someone that never registers, and I hope you can see the things that this team is working towards and trying to do to help support the towns. And I think, sometimes it's this magic event that just pops up and we ride it in July and, the magical fairies, pull it all together, and it just happens where there's so much that's happening behind the scenes, and there's so much that we can do if we know you're coming early on because you punched your ticket. And a lot of it just goes back to just the towns want to know how many can we expect. Oh. And, I can tell them what we've registered. I can tell them what we know from previous history. But, that's one of the biggest questions every year is how many people ride RAGBRAI. And, we always go off of our registration number, and then the asterisk is, but the state patrol says double that number. But we've never really had a true finalized head count. I think that'd be really, really cool to one day say, 25, 30,000, no more, no less, because we know that through registration. And you may miss some people here and there, but when I stand on the side of the road and watch riders go by, and that's one thing I love about my job, being able to stand in the towns the day of and just watch people. There are a lot of cyclists that ride this ride with no bands on their wrist, that are just there for the day. They're there for the week. And it's just, taking money out of the town's pocket, taking money out of, the registered riders' pocket. They're basically paying for a lot of the infrastructure to be there. You're kind of just using it. You're not helping with it. So if you are a team or a guy or gal that just doesn't register, just know that we are doing things differently. We're trying to find ways to give back more. We're trying to find ways to just add extra infrastructure, because everything costs money. Nothing's getting cheaper. And, if we can, take the $1 million give back and turn it into $1.5 million or $2 million, then it's truly like this national news article about the give back, because it's a pretty big deal.
And every month I post at least something from a city or a town that's giving back due to the funds they got on RAGBRAI. And you can just go out to search the tags on Bike Iowa, and there's article after article about how teams or towns are giving back because of the money they made on RAGBRAI. Last year was another give back was the Take Flight, the veterans. That was considerable sum.
Yeah,
Honor Flight.
$45,000, I think, 45.
So it's another thing that every year RAGBRAI gives back to a certain entity like that. The Dream Team.
Dream Team.
Right here at HQ.
Yep.
They get registration gear.
Yeah, that's significant. That's something that we've never really talked about until Erica kind of brought it up. I mean, you take 70 plus Dream Team kids plus all their mentors, free registration. We scout their camp spots every night. We work with the towns to make sure they have the right spots. And in our HQ, part of the the 3 different buildings that are all together, the one section, we wanted it to be for Dream Team. So they had a space where they felt safe. They could come hang out. They could, be the entry point to their ride for the day. They could, their end spot. And that's rent free. We just want them close to us. There's nothing better than, getting back from town travels and they're getting staged to leave and they're all in their jerseys ready to roll. And that's the future of this ride. These young kids that find cycling. And, the crazy thing is, we get kids on bicycles that are junior high school and have never ridden a bike before. And, you and I both know, being avid cyclists, how awesome riding a bike is, and not to have, to be a kid and not to have a bike or not to have the ability to ride a bicycle. And Dream Team is that. We just lost a kid last week, and the connection that I talked about, being able to be a part of their get together, their candlelight vigil, their, just to support each other, is pretty incredible. So we are blessed to have them in the building or next to us, being able to cover their expenses, to get them across the state. And they, at the end of the day, they still have to do the work. They still have to ride their bike. They have to put the miles in. They have to camp. They have to get across the state. But it's pretty cool to see these connections of, every shape, every size, every background. I don't care who you are. When we're together on bikes, we're Dream Team, and that's pretty magical.
And just that program in itself, the logistics around that is amazing. And this is something your whole team's involved in.
Oh yeah, I mean, we changed this year. Part of one of our partners is our semi group that Heartland, who transports the big semis and the bags across the state. They had so many bikes this last year that they needed other support. So Heartland showed up. We loaded bikes in the back of a semi, and one of our partners provided this free service to get the bikes out to the start point. And then at the end, the bikes back to RAGBRAI HQ. So, it's something that RAGBRAI and Heartland kind of partnered on, no cost to Dream Team. Yes. And it saved the day for them.
That's amazing. I mean, it is just that program in itself. And Scott Matter, amazing what he's been doing with fantastic. The program. He's so into it. Love him. As we wrap this up, I kind of want to go over the registration costs. Like, hypothetical, I put together what could or should RAGBRAI registration be, and I just think it's pretty wild to look at. I mean, compared to $230 early bird, right? So I wanted to kind of look at other events. So at the bottom of the feature, you'll see over 80 different events, multi-day, single day, charity rides, races. And we kind of took all that and what they give and their costs and kind of compared it to what RAGBRAI could be charging for costs. So I'm just going to lay this out there. This is not changing, but just something I wanted to compare because I think it's interesting. I mean, according to the numbers, I think you could charge $350 for a core registration. Like compared to $230, I think you could easily go up to $350. To do your baggage would be an extra $150, an extra $150 to camp for the week. SAG for the week would be $50, and that's cheap just to have that. Or you can go on demand. Hey, every time you want to SAG, here's $20. Help us pay gas, help us pay for our staff.
Yep.
So that's easily $400 just on the core side. If you want to carry baggage, that's $550. Up to full support at $650 a week, and that's big jump over $230.
Yeah.
But if you look at the national average, all those other rides, there's rides out there charging $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 for less than a week ride, same routes, less amenities, less logistics. So it's pretty crazy. So just looking at those two differences, that just blows me away.
Yeah, I think there's, it makes me smile. I mean, we're not going to raise the prices. I mean, I think we're in a good spot with prices. We know what we need. But at the end of the day, it's truly, what could the give back be? What could the impact of RAGBRAI be if everyone truly registered and truly, we were able to figure it out. So I don't know if it's ever going to change completely, so we're 100% good to go. But, I think in my time here as director and my team, we're going to constantly find ways to do things differently and support towns and support the riders to show that this is more than just a 7-day trip across the state. It is something that, I would love to say that, everybody has the ability to do and be able to touch. And I think with the price point, there is that. I'm very available. My number's online, my email's all over the place. If you have questions or concerns about, the price tag or, whatever that looks like, call. I love having conversations about this because I think there's just tons of awesome value that's behind the scenes that we're working towards. And at the end of the day, our job is to provide a safe ride and get you on a beautiful route that showcases the best parts of Iowa, and you have these towns take care of you. So that's kind of what we're working towards.
Well, hopefully we explain through this. That's way more than just a campground and carrying your suitcase, right?
Much more.
It's blows me away every time I look at all these details. And I'm also available. I put at the end of the feature, contact me, more than willing to sit over a beer and talk about, why you or your team's not registering and for the cheap. And I love living in Iowa. I love this is in our backyard. I'll be, as long as I can do this, I'm going to help promote RAGBRAI and be a part of it. And hopefully we can educate folks and actually give more back to our communities. And we'll continue to post everything we can about how that give back program works and what cities are able to do and the amenities they're able to add to their cities long after RAGBRAI is passed, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's pretty cool probably to come into a town 5 years later and see something that an art piece or a section of trail that RAGBRAI helped develop.
Yeah, no, it's pretty magical for sure.
And so the closeout registration opens
November 15th.
And the RAGBRAI announcement party is
January 24th at the Vibrant Music Hall in Waukee, Iowa.
Right on. And that earlier that day is the Iowa Bike Expo. So you can just stop down there. Anything else you want to close out with?
No, I appreciate your time in doing this. And like I said, if you have questions, please reach out. But, if we can get, people that don't register see the value and register, we can do a lot more. So we're excited.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Everybody ride safe.
Well, listeners, that is it for today. We want to thank you for tuning in to listen to the Just Go Bike podcast. If you would like to contact Murph and AP with a comment about the podcast, or maybe even you have a topic in mind, you can reach us at justgobikepodcast@gmail.com. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook and watch our intros on YouTube. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, especially if you're a fan. That is going to do it for this week. Until next time,
Just go bike!
theme song by Ryan Steer, logo by Suzanne Milosevic, Produced by Kathy Murphy. Social media by Andrea Parrott. Intro by Pumpkin. Until next time, just go bike.